Welcome to the Air Combat Simulation Podcast, brought to you by BVR Productions. Together with content creators, mission builders, experts, and enthusiasts, we explore the comprehensive world of combat aircraft simulation.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Air Combat Sim Podcast. This week we have Heatblur with us. We'll be talking about the F-14 and the carrier and the Viggen and whatever else comes up in the process. And so I guess just introduce everybody. We have Iron Mike. How's it going, Iron Mike?
Hey Jabbers, how's it going? It's going really great. Summer is here finally. I think restrictions are being eased up again. I still hope everybody's doing all right and is taking care of themselves in this still trying year of ours. 2020 has not been too nice to everybody, but I think we'll get through. And in that sense, I'm in a very positive mood.
Awesome. At least restrictions are lifted somewhere. My state over here, they just went back into effect because we're having a tough time. So people need to stay indoors.
I hope you get through soon.
Me too. And Iron Mike, just so everybody else knows, if they don't know, what exactly is your role with Heatblur?
Oh, in German we say "girl for everything." So basically what I do is I lead the test team, I directed the gesture recordings, I'm responsible for community management and customer support, I do mission creation, writing, stuff like that. So a little bit of everything. What I do not do is coach stuff. So that's Andrew and Ragnar and Gyros, Wither, Cobra and so on. And I fill the gaps in between a little bit if you like.
Awesome, thank you. And then next we have Andrew. How you doing, Andrew?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Hope I can call you Andrew and not.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. We kind of had that conversation, and then it kind of went another direction before the recording here.
That's all right. But
yeah, thanks. Go ahead.
I was going to say my state is in a similar state of lockdown as yours is, so. Seems like it's getting worse, and we're going back into it. So we'll see what happens.
Well, hopefully you stay safe over there.
Yeah.
Where are you at?
In Colorado.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're just a couple states away from me.
Yep.
And what do you do over at Heatblur?
I mainly just do coding, primarily in the flight model and other systems and things like that.
Awesome.
And then my secondary job is arguing with people on the forums.
I think that's everybody's job at Heatblur and every other company working for doing DCS stuff.
Andrew also does our engines.
And what? Sorry?
Andrew's also responsible for the engines.
Oh, okay.
I sort of consider that part of the flight model, so yeah, yes.
Makes sense. Awesome. And then we also have Ragnar. How you doing, Ragnar?
Hi, I'm doing pretty okay. It's my first week in vacation, and first my daughter was sick, and then my wife was sick, and now I'm feeling a little bit in my throat here, and like everywhere else, I guess you have to stay home. And wait if you have like tiny bit of symptoms. So the whole family has been staying indoors for like a week now, and but otherwise it's really great. Besides that,
it's good. Well, I hope you have a speedy recovery.
Yeah.
I can relate to having to stay indoors, especially with kids. You said you had a daughter. Yeah. That's not fun. The kids need to get out and run around and have fun. So hopefully you're not indoors too long.
Yeah, I hope so too.
And what do you do at Heatblur?
I'm a programmer too. I did the Viggen. I did a flight model and most avionics on the Viggen.
Nice. So we're missing an artist. We don't have an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have no art representation right now, unfortunately.
That's okay. Awesome. And then I'll also say again.
I'm an artist,
You're an artist?
but I don't do graphics.
Yeah, not a graphics artist.
It will be very bad.
Gotcha. And then along here side with me is Goat. How you doing, Goat?
Good. Just representing Texas here. I think we're winning in terms of.
Go big or go home.
That's right. We're Texas. That's what I'm talking about.
You guys were losing. You're like, we got to step it up a notch.
It's we bring it in a really crazy way. That's all I'm gonna say.
Goat in Slovenia, we have a saying goes like, every country, unfortunately, has got to have its south.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in. I am in Austin, and the interesting thing about Austin is that everybody here is from somewhere else. But I will say that definitely Texas is going to take this one on head on. That's for sure.
You're in a sprint with Florida man to see who can win.
Yeah, no, it's my parents have retired there, so it's always great to to compete with them on this. You think you're winning? Yeah, come on, Dad.
You think you're winning? I'm having a block party later.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to start singing, bringing everybody over to sing.
Oh man. Well, hopefully things calm down in the next couple of weeks and everybody gets a better grasp of this situation. But COVID aside, let's talk about Heatblur stuff. So I guess we just start with the F-14 since one of my favorites. What how are we looking on the F-14? What's left to do? Big feature wise and basically where are we at?
I think we could say we're like halfway through with it. In the grand scheme and in the particular scheme, of course, the Tomcat has been released fairly feature complete as the aircraft itself, but of course we promise to deliver more with it than usual, which includes the A version, which we have just begun testing with it now. That is the engine performance and stuff, and whether it works as a separate module and so on. We're still missing here's the artwork to be finished. Then the Forrestal, of course, as we promised, is going to come soon, which is also going towards completion now. Then we still have 2 campaigns outstanding, one for the B and one for the A version. And then Jester Lantern is still something we have not finished yet. We're still waiting to implement the API changes for the Phoenix missile so that works properly, and most likely we will also, maybe have a look at the damage model, external damage model. The internal damage model is very complete, in fact. And then at the very end, what is still missing is the promised AI planes. Of course, the A6 for the Tomcat and the Draken for the Viggen.
Awesome. Pretty good list. I always say in development, or it's something that I read somewhere, it's not something I came up with, but it's like the last 10% is the last 50% of all the work in development.
Or more even sometimes.
More, yeah.
It stretches out, and one of the problems is, and where we kindly ask your patience, guys, is of course that once the module has been released, the maintenance of modules is dispersed among developers differently than when you have that final push on a release where all the effort is focused on that one module and finishing this and getting that done. After that, of course, the resources are again more limited in that sense that you cannot have everybody just focus on this and everybody just focus on that. So it takes a little bit longer, and some features does drag out, especially because once the module is released, one big thing is being added to the whole process, and that is bug fixing. And that is, of course, still something that is ongoing with all the changes. Recently, we had the lighting changes that were a big thing because the whole DCS lighting has changed, and stuff like that will always require our attention from now and then, and basically topple our internal plans. So you say this week we're going to do the Forrestal, and then something happens, and you say, okay, damn it, we have to refocus on what's happened now, because that's actually an issue that, makes it unplayable or makes it not enjoyable, or it's a really huge immersion breaker, things that we cannot really, put on our customers in the meantime. So we have to refocus, do that, and then, that week of doing work on the Forrestal or on the A or whatever then gets postponed, unfortunately. And that's why these processes after release drag out more than when you have a non-released module where you can simply focus on the completion of systems or parts of it rather than fixing what is already there.
That makes sense. And it's probably something that, I mean, even I hadn't even thought about that until you mentioned it, is that DCS is kind of an ever-evolving platform that you guys started writing for version X, and it continues to move in, the right direction. And then you guys have to constantly fix things that they've made additions to, or like you said, change the lighting, and now all the lighting's messed up in your modules, and you guys got to fix it. So that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, we're a bit prisoner to that process, one could say, and I don't mean this in the negative way. That's just how it is, and we all knew what we signed up for, but basically it's a lifelong commitment to keep that thing running for you guys, and that's something we just kindly ask you keep in mind.
How much lead time do you normally have in understanding what the changes will be for the core product?
Like 0 almost, unless they tell us or they give us a heads up, which usually doesn't happen. Like that lighting thing just kind of appeared. I was working on another feature and I got into the cockpit to test it and couldn't read any of the lights. So then I told Cobra about it, and that was the first we had really known. And then the patch came out like 2 days later. So
interesting.
We couldn't really move fast enough to react to it.
I want to say here in ED's defense, that's not like neglect or ill intent or something like that. It's the internal versions sometimes change due to something they have to do, which probably falls across their feet just as it does for us. They make that change because they feel it's necessary. They push it with that what we have already built. Suddenly there might be a slight mismatch, yada yada, and boom, things are broken again. So it's on a shifting ground. It's very hard to predict stuff, and that's why I don't want to point fingers at it and saying like it's there.
No, not at all. I don't think there's any finger pointing.
No, and there shouldn't be. It's because when we tell them and we have an internalized process with them that works actually really well in the meantime, and they're making huge efforts to be more communicative as well and improve on all parts. So everybody's really pulling together at the moment to make things right and make things work. That's just something I want to mention at that point.
Yeah. And I think this new approach where the patches are coming out once a month actually makes it a lot easier to develop and fully test features before you can send them out to the public.
And it probably helps their communication too.
Yeah.
They're constantly scrambling, right?
Yeah, they make updates to the development version, which is usually like a few versions ahead of open beta several times a week. So it's always getting updates. And then once every 2 weeks, or now I guess once every month, that version will go out to the public as it gets updated. But we get updates faster than that.
That's good. Right. That sounds like a better process for sure.
Yes, and they're currently also very much fixed on bug fixing, which a lot of people have been demanding. And it's again, it's this. You always have to balance. You have to have new modules, so things are moving, and then you can sustain your business at the same time. You got to make time to have these fundamental fixes, that then again are subject to the changes that follow. It's like it's a never-ending circle, really.
Yep, makes sense. You brought up the AIM-54 missile logic. Is that something that we can expect soon, or is there still some holdup there?
I think we can expect it soon because we're currently working on it again, also together with ED in this matter. But I cannot promise it for the next patch. Let's see how the testing turns out. At the moment, it seems as if it's not completely working as it should yet, and that's why we rather not fix it before we break more, than what's working at the moment, which is a compromise, of course. And we know it's an issue online. It's an issue for some people who fly against the Tomcat as well as people who fly with the Tomcat. We're very aware of that, and we'll try to fix that as soon as possible.
Awesome.
Okay, so that's a promise. Just
That's a promise. We will fix it, but if it's in 1, 2, 3, 5, or 6 weeks, I cannot promise. But we will, of course. It's one of the priority issues,
Yep.
And one of the priority focuses for us at the moment. So expect to have something move on that front, definitely.
I think right now there's only like 1 or 2 items that didn't work when we were trying to use this new missile API, which is also changing because ED is working on the AIM-120. It seems like they're changing some things in the API for guidance logic.
Yeah, I think we saw patch notes about some changes that have already gone through too.
So hopefully they're solidifying those changes to the missile guidance API. So in theory, that might help us figure out the last remaining issues with the AIM-54 stuff.
That's cool. It actually might be better too, because if they're building it with the intent that you're going to use it, they can test everything and then just say, hey, here's what you got to do. That'd be cool.
One of the other issues is that sometimes if we're using older APIs, we get something to work for a while, but then they update something and then it breaks. And then we have to go back and it creates double work. So we want to try to avoid things like that also.
Yeah, you have to reverse. Then often you make fixes, they break before it's released, so you have to put in almost the same amount of time.
Yeah, like the automatic carrier landing system.
All those fixes, so it's not even worse. Yeah, it can be, sometimes it's a big back and forth, but that's often how it is in any creation process. You need trial and error as well, and you cannot always predict everything and be on point with everything, unfortunately.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So maybe for those that don't know, what are some of the changes that are coming to this flight model or the AIM-54 in general once this patch can be released? So
the flight model will not change. The flight model has been done, in our opinion, very accurately to existing data, which in the AIM-54 is fairly available, and all that is, by the way, covered in the white paper. Which we published that. I think even you talked about that, Jabbers, a while way before the release. So everything flight model data actually is fairly accurate, or is very accurate, I would say. The thing that is not correct at the moment is the guidance. So the things that will change is what's happening is that the AIM-54 behaves like a normal active missile that is as the AIM-120 used to behave. That means it flies out to the target, then it goes active at a certain range to the target, and so forth. That is currently the case in TWS as well in STT, but it shouldn't be, because in STT it should be a fully SARA-guided missile and behave like an AIM-7 rather than an AIM-120. And in TWS, it as well as STT SARA-guided until it goes active, which is 16 seconds time to impact, and not on a specific range. So that range can differ depending on the closure rate of the target, the altitude, distance from it, and so on, how fast the missile is arriving, and how much distance is left between it and the target at those 16 seconds. Additionally, the ORG-9 can send an active signal to the Phoenix if the target is lost, because the ORG-9 can store track files for up to 2 minutes, so it will send the Phoenix active into the last suspected direction of the target. So these are the changes that will come. And the bug, however, that it is always active, that existed, seems to be fixed for me. It doesn't seem to guide all the time anymore. It just seems to go straight now when lock is broken, for example, in STT. However, if you're within that 7 nautical miles of that missile, it will still go active, which probably in an STT shot. I have to ask Gyrowector, but I think it's also wrong. So these are the things that will change. It's the guidance, not the flight model.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the thing you were talking about, where if you're an STT and you break the lock and it still goes after the target, I think people are referring to that as magic INS in the community.
I think
that's a weird name for that, but yes.
Yeah, well, I think that
the missile knows where the missile is. Because the missile knows where the missile isn't, right?
Yeah, it knows where it is because it knows where it is. One of the best videos ever. But anyway, the magic INS refers to more than that. It refers to the missile, or to previously the missile being always active. And it is. I will not confirm or deny that this bug is still existing, because it appears to me that it's not, but it has not been tested yet very methodically in order to say it is fixed or not. I just have not seen it yet again. But the magic INS was also, for example, missiles guiding through terrain, right? So if you're behind the mountain, the missile will still continue to guide, which it shouldn't,
Right.
But that was the case also for the AIM-7s and so on. The INS of the missile is something we cannot influence. So that's something that ED is most likely working on, and that will then also benefit the AIM-54, because of course the missile shouldn't guide a target actively that's flying behind a mountain ridgeline, etc.
Sure, that makes sense. I think the thing you were talking about earlier, with the distance of going active versus time to impact. So the time to impact, the 16 seconds, is that something that's just a standard, or is there a way for the Rio to tell the missile to go active?
I think there is an active command, but I don't want to say anything on that because I'd either have to ask Nakai or...
I'm like 99% sure that that's true. I think the Rio can force it to go active.
Yeah, it's the active switch, but I'd have to ask. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. And then just for reference, so the listeners know, the range that you were saying was 7 miles. I think it's 15 kilometers. It's written hard-coded as 15 kilometers, which is like 7.5 miles. But I think that's interesting because the gameplay dynamic is going to change a lot, because currently with AIM-120s, depending on range, and I wouldn't even say currently, because all that stuff is currently in flux, and distances are changing. But let's say a couple months ago and well before that, usually when you get the active tone, you knew you had a certain amount of time, because you knew, and when your RWR went off, that thing was at 15 kilometers away from you, and you could gauge usually distance and time and speed. You had, anywhere from 4 to 7 seconds to try to figure out how to get rid of that missile. But if it's 16 now, that's a huge difference.
16 seconds, I don't think it's that huge a difference.
Well, it's like triple the time of the warning system.
Yes,
is my thought.
Yeah, did you run the numbers on that? Because I haven't yet.
Yeah, it really just depends on your speed. But
yeah, because it really depends on the speed and the distance the missile was fired, the speed of the missiles. So you'd have to make probably certain scenarios for certain situations and then compare. Of course, the difference, that what I can say without running numbers, is it's going to be dynamic versus it hasn't been. So before, and of course, in that fact, you're definitely right. It will be longer in a lot of cases for sure. So you will have more warning time. Secondly, it will be dynamic. That means that you will have to estimate a little bit yourself, how close is that to me now when I get the warning. And of course, the faster you are, it's going to be different, very much different if you fly very fast or very slow. But it's going to be alleviated by the fact that the midterm guidance is going to be a bit better for the missile, because it will not have this active hook at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It just turns hard to the target.
Yeah, it bleeds off a lot of. So you will get maybe an earlier warning, but you will also get a missile that is bleeding less energy while flying towards you. So I think it's going to be a bit balanced in that sense, but it's definitely, in my opinion, going to be more interesting, because you will have more means to defeat the missiles, as you should, and the Tomcat drivers and Rios will have to counter that into their tactical approach when shooting at people. And maybe the 60 nautical miles shots will not be that effective anymore, in that sense that people will, of course, in such a shot get a much further or much earlier warning and be able to notch the missile easier than before.
That, and accompanied by a tactic that you could force the missile at a much longer distance to go active, and they would get the warning And you could almost play the system a little bit and confuse your target, oh, that thing's 16 seconds out or whatever that they're expecting, but let's say it's 30 instead.
However, I'm not sure if you gain something with that unless you want to spook a guy.
That's what I mean, yeah. You're probably less likely to hit, but you're more likely to get him to go defensive quicker, right?
For a defensive shot, that's great, I mean,
Yeah.
but one miss, it's always every missile warning subsequent to the first missile warning is subsequent to the first missile warning, means
right.
the missile already being defended most of the times, so.
Right.
It's of course nice if you could push that active signal to be later, but that's not possible.
Makes sense. Let's switch over to Jester. How's the development on Jester coming along? Are we getting? You mentioned earlier we're getting Lantern functionality, and that's on the table, and we've heard about that for a little bit.
That's something where we need to take. I think a couple of things need to be finished, and then it's the thing with Jester Lantern is this: we want to also bring a fix with it that will allow players to disable either Jester or the human Rio online while in flight. That means you can turn off your human and you will get Jester back. You can turn off Jester as the pilot and you will get your human Rio back. This will help that when a Rio gets disconnected online, the Jester part is gone. Like until now, unfortunately, when a Rio gets disconnected, 9 out of 10 cases, your Jester will not work anymore. Basically you have to land or pick a new aircraft because of it. So this will be an option so that, you lose your Rio, you can just re-enable Jester and it will override that. But in order for that to be possible, we need to disallow any kind of reach back functionality how could I word that better? It will not be possible anymore for Rio inputs to be modded available for the pilot. And this will disable the Lantern pilot mod. So we need to wait on this experimental part of the F14 that is being built at the same time than all the changes that you're getting in at the moment, so that we're ready with that, because once that comes in, pilot Lantern mod will not be available anymore, or whatever mods people are using in order to have Rio inputs available for the pilot. Was that too complicated? Was that understandable?
No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, there's a mod right now where you can have, and I've used it, and I used it to make that video about the Easter egg recently, where you can, as a pilot, you can make inputs to move the Lantern and target things without leaving the front seat, not getting in the back seat. So you'll disable that, but you guys want to obviously make sure that everything's working really solid, because disabling that could cause problems, right?
Exactly. So once we're far enough for that, and then we still need to record just the stuff for the Lantern, we will bring both the Lantern and that fix for online, which will allow, for better online play, more modularity with what's going on in your backseat, more control for the pilot, or let's say the owner of the aircraft, right? And at the same time, you will get just the Lantern, but these mods unfortunately will not be possible there anymore. That's also not a thing of whether we want to or not. We don't mind mods in any kind of way. Mods are always awesome and people should have their choices, but it's a necessity from how the multi-crew Jester part will be recoded for this online fix to work. So it's unfortunately nothing we have a choice on.
I got it. So will it be possible to so let's say you're playing online, you get some random person jumps in your cockpit or in your back seat, you're flying along and you're like, this guy sucks. Can you kick him and re-enable Jester?
You can re-enable Jester.
That's funny.
And
Fantastic.
but it's also cool because now you can really give people scenic rides. I mean, you could fly an entire engagement with Jester to show something to somebody who's sitting in your backseat without interfering with that, and vice versa.
Oh, so they can still be in there. It's not a matter of them not being in the seat. They can still be in the seat and you can do everything. That's awesome.
So you
that.
will be able to fly and have Jester doing all the stuff, and the Rio is just going to be a passenger, basically.
That's super cool. What other features for Jester are you guys looking at implementing? Is there anything that's not small but big features that he's missing that you guys could add, or anything you guys want to improve in the future?
Apart from the lantern, really big features, no. There's nothing really planned beyond what he's doing. I mean, I think he's fairly. I know a lot of people have issues in PVR, and I think we will, always keep retouching on that logic if possible a bit. But Jester is also a very complicated system, and it's something where I, on the code side, cannot speak to how much work it is. And often, when I ask Twitter, hey, can we throw in that menu thing, or can we change that a little bit? The answer is yes, if we are prepared to invest that amount of time in it, because even smallest menu changes for just something like that is all very complicated and takes a lot of time. So
I see.
It has to be balanced versus, what is the kind of output and where can we really improve something for the player. And I think that's maybe a little bit of Raider logic, think of how TWS, TWS8, RWS management can be a little bit easier maybe for the pilot through Jester and stuff like that. But so there's not really any huge feature about the lantern in the size of the lantern feature that is really planned for Jester after that.
Yeah, and I think it was you that said in a different interview, probably before just when the F-14 had come out, that Jester is not a replacement for a good human Rio.
No, but I think he does a fairly good job in replacing a human Rio.
Emphasis on the word good.
Yeah. the thing is, of course, he's a limited AI, and it's, somebody asked a couple of days ago, I think, why the menus are situational, and if we see Jester's brain, you don't see Jester's brain, but you see his thoughts, and I jokingly said, somehow we assume that you assume that he assumes what you assume. That's kind of the thought line, so because it's actually your speech options for him, right? However, we cannot know that, but Jester does because of his situational awareness and his structure, so that he is situational in his actions and options that he foremost offers to you. So if you're an air to ground, his main focus will be air to ground, but his other focuses like scanning the radar, sanitizing the sky, looking outside of the window, checking for stuff and so on, will still be active, so it's a feedback loop between the pilot and Jester in that sense.
That makes sense. That's going to make it tough to debug too.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Swither's done an incredibly amazing job with creating the AI, and of course it's a limited AI, but in fact, it's something that has never existed in that sense, and not to that extent. So I think he's done a really great work, and I know that there are still issues, like often getting the unable, can't do, no can do, sorry. It's become a little bit of a meme for some guys, but honestly, I have to say, for me, I don't have this issue because I know Jester by now so well that I know that, if there's no bandit explicitly showing on the TIT, then lock enemy target ahead is the wrong choice. You just have to go target ahead or by priority or something like that. So you also have to figure in, and know Jester's limitations in order to make him very effective. And he will never be as effective as a human Rio, because in that feedback loop, the Rio can anticipate what you're thinking, while Jester can only react on what you're thinking and then propose his own, as in you have to switch the air to ground switch for him to be in the air to ground mode. A Rio will already know through the context and discussion with you, in about 15 seconds we're going to enter an air to ground, so I'm already going to set up the weapons and whatnot. So
right.
This is the huge difference, of course, that Jester cannot and never will be able to achieve, is to have a mindset that is anticipating what you as a pilot are and need and want.
Makes sense. Okay, well, let's move on to the carrier, but real quick, I want to ask a couple questions that were posed by the community. I think they're relatively probably short answers. So I'm just going to ask them here real fast. One of them was, Why is the F14 stick from VKB and Heatblur not true to size? The competitor seems more accurate. I'm guessing the competitor is Virpil in this case. But you guys want to take a stab at that at all?
Yeah, I would say that it would surprise me if Virpil's is closer, because I think the VKB one is based off laser scans of a real stick that we gave them. So
that makes it sense. Yeah, I think
unless they messed up something in the manufacturing or design process, I would say that it's likely the VKB is more accurate. But I don't own the Virpil, so I don't know.
Where did you get your stick?
I think they laser scanned an actual cockpit, not
Yes.
just
So
the stick.
what we did with VKB, to explain that maybe a little bit more, is we scanned the Tomcat stick for the F14, and we gave them our laser scan so they could develop the stick based on these scans. So it's a very accurate stick based off on these scans, and it was also sent to our SMEs who commented on it, and then small corrections were made, and that's why we assume it's the more accurate stick. Be that how it may, the Virpil stick is also a very good stick. Don't get us wrong on that. It's just that we don't know where they got their data from. All we can comment on is that the laser scans and off of which it is based on for the VKP sticks are very accurate, and that's why we would assume that because of the Virpil stick being a bit bigger, this is the more accurate size. But the Virpil stick is also a great F14 stick, and quality-wise, I think they're both right up there with each other.
Yeah, and I have a review on both, and I don't think you can go wrong with either one. There's issues with each one individually, and they're both completely different issues, but I don't think either one is bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, they're both.
It's going to be preference. If you're in the VKB ecosystem, it makes sense to get that one. If you're not and you want swappability that Virpil offers, then that's the way to go too. So, okay, move on from that. Is there any chance that we'll get a less weathered looking cockpit?
No.
Okay, perfect.
It would cost 2 years of development to recreate the same in less weather, and there's this. Actually, if you watch the video where David Baranek's bio is flying with a DSN ZA, the fly along, I don't know if you've guys seen the video. Maybe you can put a link into the description below. If you go to 20 minutes and 30 seconds, he will comment upon how realistic the cockpit looks, and that's just how it was, even a couple of weeks into service.
We have multiple SMEs that all said that the cockpit looks about what it looked like if you would find one out on a carrier, like on a cruise.
Some SMEs commented that the screws would not have rust on it, that would be basically, they would say, like, what's up with your maintenance here? We thought it added that connection to salt sea, that kind of stuff. And it's nothing they really said there would be, it's a minor thing. That was the only comment, but the rest, the paint, the scratches, everything of that, that's very much as it was. And it was a necessity due to, seawater and ocean being very corrosive, very aggressive. So you had to repaint quickly. They did not scratch off the paints. They repainted it just over it and so on. But I think it's also nice because, it tells little stories about everybody who worked on that aircraft and left their traces in it. But tastes differ, I know that. So I think this is something that mods will have to solve. People want to mod that, we support any kind of mods in that direction. It's great if people have choices, but for us to do that on the same level, it's just too much investment.
Yeah, and I think that there are mods out there already to fill that void. So I think there's no reason to do it if you can just get a mod anyway. I also think that maybe some of the complaint is that it's hard to read some of the labels because of the weathering, which is fine. Probably, like you said, more realistic. And the difference being that, to sympathize with the listener who had this question, is that maybe the reason this comes up is because it's hard to read the labels, you can't figure out where things are. It's hard to find things, whereas somebody who's flown this plane has gone through sims that are probably not weather damaged, and they know from muscle memory and everything. So, but whatever. There's mods.
Yeah, I mean,
I understand.
Yeah, we understand that, and there's a readability, but I think also this is an issue that carries on for maybe, let's be generous, a month or two. And then once you get familiarized with a cockpit and know where everything is, and this I think is then an issue which is less of a thing, because the lights and those kind of gauges, they I think are fairly readable. But again, if somebody disagrees, that's totally fine. Everybody has a different perception and a different taste, and that's why it's so important that we have mods who offer choices then for people.
Yep, totally agree. What about so I guess I'm just going to read this question because it's quite long and quite complex and hard to filter down, but it says, we are aware of the plethora of F-14 skins, especially due to the fact that there is no dynamic modex available. And with the 8 coming along, this is even more pronounced. Is there a dynamic modex something in your planning to do? Okay. The Community A4 has found a nice way to handle multiple locations and sizes. Will you consider community contribution skins for the F-14, in particular fictional foreign liveries available by the community? I think that last part we don't really need to answer, but what about the dynamic modex problem?
So the problem with the dynamic modex in the F-14 is that the fonts, the size, it's not only different in between squadrons, it's also difference within squadrons, skins, and different variations of skins. So the solution is not very easy to make a modifiable modex as in other aircraft where it's less apparent that font and look of the entire modex is quite different. It's something we know is a request from people, and it is important to some. I find it important as well. It's not nice if you fly a 4-ship with 101s all next to other. I understand that very much. Possibility would maybe be to add 4 skins per. So you have a 101, 102, 103, and 104, which I think would be nice as well. But we have to see. We haven't really gotten around to point our finger and say this is the solution we're gonna go with. It's not an easy matter. We know it's an issue. We have it on our mind. It's on the list, but that's unfortunately all I can say to this at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw my +1 in here just because. But this question reads, my friend had this idea. Would it be possible to add key bindings so that you or the pilot, or the Rio, can stick his middle finger up in whatever direction you're looking, and it stays there till you let go?
I personally think we should add this.
I think it was the first thing the CV Lemoyne asked, when they tried the Tomcat, and they did what everybody does in the beginning. Hey, look, I can look over. Hey, can you look over? Can you see me leaning? Yeah, I can see you leaning. He asked, can I flick you off?
That's awesome.
So it will be cool. Let's see.
Well, I look forward to that in the next patch. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yes, yesterday, 2 weeks.
Okay, let's switch over to the carrier. So we have the Forest Roll coming. How's progress on that going?
Andrew, I feel I'm talking so much.
I haven't really been keeping tabs on that one personally. As far as I know, I think a lot of the art stuff is done, but a lot of the carrier interface code or the API is like shifting around because of the super carrier. So beyond that, I can't really say much because I don't know, because the people working on that are not in this chat room.
Okay,
and I haven't really asked them about it.
Do you know if, like, functionality-wise, are we getting the same kind of deck crew animations from the super carrier stuff, or is that just not apply because it has to totally be redone? Or
I think the current plan is to basically make it on feature parity with what the Stennis was.
Okay.
And the decision to allow crew and animations and all that stuff would probably be up to ED. It would be a massive amount of work for us to duplicate all that work for basically what's like a bonus add-on to the Tomcat module.
Right, makes sense. Now, if you're wiring into all of the super carrier stuff, I'm assuming that means that it'll have the basic functionality that the Stennis has. Unless you have the super carrier, then it'll have the extended stuff.
Maybe that's a great idea.
That would be cool. I mean,
I mean, that's actually Jabbers. I mean, to be honest, this didn't cross my mind yet, and maybe this is something we can actually spin on and ask ED about if that would be a possibility, because this, I think, is a solution that could make both sides happy. So this is actually, I think, a really great idea you just suggested. We might not have even thought about.
I'll take any extra revenue you guys get. I'll take it. Sorry, go ahead.
I think a lot of the answer to that question would be up to ED, like what they'd be willing to give us out of their super carrier work to put onto our carrier. So I think a lot of it's really up if we ask them and they want to say yes.
I mean, it feels like to me that it would just be a lot of just the ATC stuff. I mean, if you're not doing the deck crew animations, then I mean, just hook into the ATC stuff.
It's always the question, before we get too excited on this, the question is always implementation. How easy is it to separate yet another carrier into two modules? And, I mean, is it even feasible and so forth? I mean, one of the questions that is also, how you would say, what's the English word? Sorry, give me a sec. I'll start this again. So one of the questions that's basically being dealt with between ED and us is also, how is it for the Rio if the pilot owns the carrier and the Rio does not own the carrier and stuff like that. So it's not so straightforward always in terms of it's a great idea, let's just do it. So we'll have to see. It's like Andrew says, ultimately something that ED needs to decide upon. And the one thing that we can promise is, of course, that it's going to be on parity feature-wise with the Stennis, which, of course, I know is not much of a promise, especially for those who own the supercarrier and who by now know how nice it is to have that crew, to have the proper ATC and so forth. But again, it's something we need to come to a feasible solution together with ED, and then we will see where it gets from there. But at the same time, it's still going to be a great experience because it's a vastly different carrier to all the carriers that we have. It's going to be very accurate. It's going to have, a smaller landing area. Different cables are different than on the carriers that we had before and so forth. And I think it's going to add a lot to the immersion overall. Whether it's implemented on supercarrier or stuff.
That's pretty cool. Is it different wire system? Or cable, sorry? It's 5? Yeah. I thought it was 5. I didn't want to stick my foot in my mouth, though. Well, that's cool. I don't really have anything else on the carrier specifically. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about on it, or does that pretty much cover it?
I think we can.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on to the Viggen. So I guess just like the question that we first asked with the F-14, what is left to do to make the Viggen feature complete? Is there anything big, outstanding? Or is it all just bug fixes and little things?
Well, I can say much for the art stuff. I know that there are things that they want to update in the cockpit related to new technology that's available in graphically in DCS. But I don't know anything about that. But I think that there's some ideas there to do, but most things that we've been doing for quite a long time now is like fixing small things that crops up. I would say that there has been a lot of work with regressions, stuff that used to work that somehow stops working, and that's I guess that was like the main work for quite some time. I don't know how technical I should get, but for myself at least, what I've been doing is trying to like reduce technical depth, because Viggen has been in development for 7 years now, and at least in the beginning, I tried to move as fast as possible to get something done, and those things come back and haunt you.
I feel your pain there. Tech debt is awful.
Yeah, and you guys are going to experience this too with the F-14. I promise you. But so I've been working with stuff that maybe the end user doesn't really notice that much. Like I think one issue that has been taking a long time is memory safety, to make sure that everything is correct when reading and writing memory in the module. And one thing you can notice with when this doesn't work is that when you run the module and then you like watch a replay and everything doesn't happen as the way it worked. It happened first time you flew the plane. Like maybe you turned something on and then made a right turn, but then when you watch it again, the plane turns around and crashes into the ground instead.
I think that we see that in, I mean, more than just the Viggen. I see that in a lot of it. The Spitfire does it, the MiG-21 does it, F-14 does it.
Tomcat is definitely guilty.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a memory issue or a memory.
It can be. It's not always, but in C++, if you don't, if you're not careful, it could. It does allow you to read like garbage memory.
Oh, I see.
So
that's interesting. I had thought it was a side effect of just how the replay system went, because I mean, I guess this makes sense now that you're saying it, but the replay system, I would say the replay system in DCS breaks for every plane given enough time.
Yeah. And I can confirm that too, because I've watched lots of replays of and it's not only like the Viggen that does strange things, but also the AI and everything.
Yeah, that's funny.
Does different things.
I think just to give the listeners some clarity, so that there's two ways to do a replay system. You can do it based on physics, which is how DCS works. Right, it induces the same physics rather than recording position rotation on a time scale. Is that fairly accurate?
Yes.
So if you watch a multiplayer, as example, if you watch a track back from a server, and there's nobody playing on the server, it's all people playing from external sources on the server. The server's replay track will be more accurate in terms of what happened because it's based off of a position and rotation on a timescale system versus physics, correct? I think that's accurate.
Yeah, it's like recording the kinematics or whatever, or something like just positions and things like that and playing them back. Whereas normally DCS tracks are deterministic, so it like records all your inputs and then tries to replay those exactly back in. And if you have like a memory problem or something else, you can get tracks that don't work.
I know we're probably going too deep for the listeners here, but I don't care because it's interesting to me. That's actually pretty cool. Glad you said something about that. It's interesting.
I think to hear that, and in the Tomcat, which makes it even more difficult is the multi-crew.
Yeah.
I mean, when the replay and track system and so on for DCS was developed, nobody even remotely thought of anything like multi-crew. Maybe a bit, I was somewhere, but something like Jester or so. That was surely not on the most foremind when that was created. So this caused additional issues as well.
And that's why we don't have a rewind system, is because it's really hard to rewind physics versus if you look at something like X-Plane is recording position, rotation on time, and basically tweening the difference between, which is given point A and B at this point in time, I should be here. And so because of that, you can reverse that logic, right? And you can fast forward time, you can go backwards, you can go forward, doesn't matter. But in DCS, we can only move forward.
You can't even, it's realistic.
yeah, it's true. Interesting. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I think you can recuperate the flight from the replay, right? You could go back in the replay and then fly from that point on. Like that.
Yeah. I've used that a couple times.
Very cool feature. It'd be nice to have.
Well, it's also, I can see it from a development standpoint. It's really cool, and this is probably why ED wants you to submit tracks for bugs, is they can replay it, and rather than replaying something and getting feedback on where the person was, it's actually doing the input. So they can make a change, replay and see if it fixes it, make a change, replay and see if it fixes it. That makes sense from that standpoint.
In a sense, that's a really good method of trying to do that, but because it's so broken, it doesn't really work.
Well, on top of that, a flight model change would break a replay, period.
Yeah. Also, yeah.
Interesting. I wish, and if ED's listening, here's a feature for you. I wish you could choose your type of recording. I wish you could say, I only want you to record position and rotation and based on time. I don't know what the right word for that is. And then if you're replaying a track, we could rewind and fast forward. That'd be amazing. But if you're submitting a bug, it has to be done on the other replay system. Like that would be the best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Awesome. Well, thanks for opening my eyes to that, Ragnar. Sorry to cut you off there. But basically, what I'm understanding is you're kind of going back and fixing all of the tech debt that you had, developing and trying to push quickly and get the Viggen out on time.
I think all modules probably share that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I mean, even in the world of software which is business related, that I work in, we get that problem. You know, you have a release date and you're a month out and you're like, crap, we got to get all these features fixed, and you start coding and you're like, to do in the code. You're like, we'll fix this after we release it. This will get us by. It'll release it. Now you got to go back and commented out code and to dos. That's always tech debt.
Fortunate thing in Ragnar's case is that you will push like to 15 commits maybe during the week, and then you will have one patch note for the end. See, I mean,
right. Not everything is something people need to know.
There's a lot more work going on behind the scenes on the Viggen that I think is just not visible to the public.
And I'm also going through and fixing, like, we have still bugs, of course. I would say not everything is very detrimental to the player experience, but people keep, I guess, if people take the time to report it to us, we have to take it serious and try to fix it for them.
Right, that makes sense.
But there's smaller issues that are still getting fixed.
How far along do you think you guys are percentage-wise on the Viggen? Like, are we getting close to it being completely done? And I mean, obviously, it's probably never going to be completely done, but considered done.
Yeah, cut out a little bit there, but I think I know what you said. Well, that's a really tough question because we have to consider it done at some point. The thing is, we have to, at least for like a past year or past 2 years maybe, most of the work has been to like keep it updated and working with DCS. I don't think people realize that quite a bit of work, because there's like not only the light changes that are visible to the end users, also there's a lot of changes in their what's called SDK. It's their software development kit, and we have to make sure that our module is compatible with DCS. So quite a lot of work is put into just making it run in new versions of DCS. Having said that, of course we want to like, as long as there are players in DCS and like it's a platform that is alive and very much looks like it, because we can see that there are new DCS players coming in all the time, and the world is expanding. I think it's our aim is to support DCS, which is quite likely a lifetime commitment. But where am I going with this? Yeah, that's I think our main goal to make it work, and also we have some things we really want to do that I think at least the art guys have talked about. I don't want to promise anything that they will do, but as I said before, there's some cockpit changes and stuff that they want to implement. But I'm pretty sure that we won't. Let's say like this: I'm very sure that we won't be adding new features to the Viggen, more fix stuff, but we're not planning to like add something new. I think there's some missions coming up, tutorials and stuff like that. But yeah,
basically overall the module is fairly complete. You got bug fixes to do, and then the missions and maybe some artwork. Are you? Do you mean like more skins, more or just updates to the current art?
I think they want to do some more skins. I'm not sure, but I believe so. I think so.
And then one of the community questions was, do you guys plan on doing the JA-37 Interceptor variant in the future? Is that anything you can talk about, or no comment?
No comments.
Okay.
But
that's a yes and a no.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
For now, it's a no.
For now, it's a no. Got it.
It would be kind of cool, though.
Yeah. I think anything that can be added to DCS is cool. Personally, I mean, even if it doesn't shoot stuff, I prefer the flight model in DCS over other flight sims. So,
great addition for sure.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that.
Okay. Well, we're kind of running out of time here, so I'll just wrap up here with asking you guys, what's the foreseeable future of Heatblur entail? Obviously, we have the 14, the Carrier, the Viggen. They're all kind of coming to a point where we're closing up everything. Obviously, a year from now or however long that is. But do you guys have anything that you're thinking about, even if you don't want to talk about it specifically, that could be something in the future for DCS, or anything on that regard?
Say, like, we want to finish what we started first and deliver on our promises first before we delve into thinking about what comes next. I think we owe that the community, and I think early access, as much as it might be a necessity, is also something that has to be treated with great care towards the customer. So this has and must be our main focus until that is done. And then I think we can start, dreaming a bit more of what could be afterwards and so on. And certainly, it's not that we don't have ideas or personal wishes or whatever, all of that is somewhere there, but it's really nothing that we focus on at the moment or we think about. We think about delivering on our promises first, and then we will allow ourselves to, dream up the future a bit more proactively again.
Yeah, I would say about a month ago, or maybe a little more than that, we all kind of made a Google Doc of stuff we still wanted to add to the F-14, and the list became pretty long. So it feels like the F-14 still has a pretty long time to go before we'd call it done. Obviously, will never be actually done, but as close to done as possible. And I think a lot of those items were not like early access release blocking items, but they were items that we would eventually like to add. So I feel like we're probably going to try to finish those up before we try to tackle anything new or even think about that.
Awesome. I like it.
As Ragnar said, we tend to make our own lists huger than they could be. We could have called the Tomcat released, we could have called the Viggen released by now. In comparison of what's there and what's missing, would be fair enough to say it's just work in progress item. It's fine. Or even not deliver, not have a Forester, not have an A, would have been a perfectly fine module like that as well, in my opinion. But of course, we, as we're, just as invested in simming as you guys, we want these things for ourselves as well. We want a cool carrier with it. We want the A version. We want all these, the Draken AI and so on. So we tend to stretch that goal a little bit more for ourselves. But at the same time, I think it's really worth it because it's great to have a module. It's much greater to have a module with a lot of content.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and do this interview. I really do greatly appreciate all of the input and the answers to the questions from the community, and all the insight you guys have, and really appreciate what you guys are doing for the flight sim community. So thank you from me and everyone else here.
Thanks, Jabbers. Thanks for the interview. Thanks for everybody in the community supporting us. Thank you for your questions. And if you have more questions or if your question hasn't been answered, feel free to send it to me or post it on the forums or below the video or so whatsoever. We'll always try to answer them, of course. Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we're going to get out of here and catch you on the next one. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Air Combat Sim. Don't forget to subscribe or tell a friend about it. You have a question, idea for an episode, or a special guest you'd like us to invite? Feel free to reach out on Facebook, Discord, or via email. Air Combat Sim was brought to you by BVR Productions.